Hi, we're here today at Borders with Stacy Schiff, Pulitzer Prize-winning author, to talk about her newest book, Cleopatra. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Kristen. It's a pleasure.
So, what was it about Cleopatra that compelled you to write a biography?
Well, I'd always wanted to do this, and it was a long time in coming, a long time figuring out how to do it. But essentially, you've got the most famous woman in history, basically, about whom we know surprisingly little, or we have surprisingly few facts about. And you have an all-star cast. You've got Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, Herod, and Cleopatra. So there was this, inevitable sense of working in primary colors, working with these thrilling characters. The question was just narratively, how are you going to figure out how to do it, given the paucity of material?
So certainly when most people think of Cleopatra, they have the image of Elizabeth Taylor in their mind. What is it that we've gotten wrong so far historically about Cleopatra that you uncovered in writing this book?
I think what we've gotten wrong is two things. We've settled for a myth, which makes a lot of sense since we're up against Shakespeare and Elizabeth Taylor and all these very compelling myths. And secondly, we just haven't put it in context. So that if you look at it in context, you realize her beauty was important, but her position politically was vastly more important, and even more important than that was her wealth. So when Julius Caesar meets Cleopatra in Alexandria in 48 BC, what you're really struck by is the fact that he is meeting the richest person in the world, man or woman, and he needs money. So there's an attraction above and beyond any kind of physical attraction. There's a political attraction here. She needs him, he needs her. There's a real sense of the politics behind the scene. And I think just as always happens, the love life trumps the political history, and we're much more fixated on her affairs with these men than we are with the political strategies and the political considerations behind the relationships.
What a lot of people don't know is that she was married. So tell us about that.
What I didn't know is that she hails from a world where women have all these rights. She's married to her brother, presumably. We're not entirely sure of that. She then has an affair with Caesar. She later has an affair with Mark Antony. And in the middle, she is a co-regent with her other brother, very young brother. So whether or not they're married is questionable. How long he's actually in any kind of position of power with her is questionable, but theoretically they are a ruling couple together. She never, to the best of our knowledge, marries either Julius Caesar or Mark Antony.
Do you think that there was real love between her and either of those two men?
I wouldn't go out on that limb, but politically speaking, if you are the king or the queen of a country and you are really thinking in terms of a dynasty and in terms of what is best for your subjects, I don't think love necessarily enters into the picture. I think this is a very calculating woman. She knows what she needs from the Romans. They know what they want from her, and the political considerations really take front seat. And the fact that she represents such an incredibly opulent and wealthy nation is really the crucial piece of the puzzle.
And in reading the book, she is quite the political strategist.
If you want a real sense of her strategy, you kind of look at how things pan out with her siblings. There are 5 siblings initially. The eldest sister is murdered by the father when she tries to usurp the throne, which leaves Cleopatra in line for the throne. She and her brother jointly inherit the throne. They soon end up at war with each other. That's when Julius Caesar arrives. The brother is killed in that war. 2 siblings left. The sister is exiled after that war. She's always a sort of threat in the background. The younger brother is poisoned by Cleopatra, and then ultimately she prevails upon Mark Antony to get rid of the other sister as well. So, in the end, she's the only one with a claim to the throne. It's pretty gruesome stuff.
Now, tell me about her death, because I know that this is something that, again, is very interesting.
She and Mark Antony are defeated in 30 BC. And it is clear to her as the Romans are closing in that she will be taken to Rome and carried in a triumph as a prisoner, which is the last thing that she wants, in fact. We have 2 accounts of her death, one by Plutarch, one by Dio. They're intensely contradictory. So part of the question here is how do we reconcile these 2 very different accounts? But the real question in the end is, does she kill herself? Or is she assisted in committing suicide by the Romans, who don't really know what to do with her because she's somewhat of a difficult prisoner. She's the mother of a child of Julius Caesar's. She's tied up with the divinities of the ancient world. It's a tricky situation with what to do with her. So there are 2 theories, and I really talk about them both in the book. Either she does herself in at the very last minute, or she is assisted in doing herself in by the Romans who are on the doorstep.
Let's talk a little bit about the fact, so the book has been optioned for a movie.
It has.
And can you talk at all about the casting for the movie?
The only thing I know is that Angelina Jolie has been attached to star, which sounds magnificent to me. It's exactly the right look, insofar as we know what Cleopatra looked like, which of course is one of the other complications. We don't really know what her face looked like.
So, what sort of legacy do you think Cleopatra left behind?
Well, I think she fits into an existing myth, for starters. I mean, there's always been this, wonderful archetype of the sinuous Eastern seductress, and that myth is something that she doesn't create but attaches itself to her. And I think that continues through the ages. I mean, all the romanticizing we have done about her has centered on the image of the femme fatale, this, Eastern seductress who gets what she wants, her wiles are something that no man can resist. And we've forgotten all the other pieces of the puzzle, which is the fact that, she actually might have been smart or clever or calculating, or for that matter was running a huge and very bureaucratically intense country during all of those years.
Is there anything that you think that today's political strategists could look to her for in terms of advice or?
Sort of killing one's siblings and poisoning others, you mean? No, I think by our standards, first century BC politics was something it was a little bit too bloody a sport for us for today. I mean, certainly there's a lot of playing people off against each other. And, what was interesting to me in writing this book was how little human nature changes. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. All of those, foreign policy dictates which you hear were entirely true in her day as well. And I played with that a bit with her relationship with Herod, who's a rival in the sense that they both have claims to the same territories. They're both competing for Roman affections, and the two of them are basically playing their interests off of each other. So there's this wonderful rivalry between these two historical characters whom we don't think of really in the same slice of history, in the same breath. And they are applying everything they know about foreign policy to courting the Romans.
So, obviously you've written a series of biographies. Who's next for you?
It's very hard to pull myself away from this one. I must say the classical world was really thrilling. I would like to do someone who's left papers. Obviously a problem with this book is you don't have her voice, and that's really hard to work around a voice. But it's hard to predict what I'm going to do next. I mean, when I finished the Franklin book, I had hoped I could do this, but I wasn't sure still it could be done. So I was looking at the 18th century for quite a while. I may end up back there. It's not entirely clear. I haven't quite got this one out of my system yet.
Well, it was a very powerful book, absolutely fascinating, and I know that our readers are going to love it. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us today about Cleopatra.
Thanks, Kristen.